ready, Staten Island. It's time to celebrate 5 years of Ferry Hawks baseball. Come out to the ballpark this week as the Ferry Hawks welcome in the Charleston Dirty Birds May 5th through the 10th. Grab the kids and come on out. We kick it off on Tuesday, May 5th with Cinco de Baseball with $5 tickets and $5 food and beverage specials. And we end the week as we celebrate all moms on Mother's Day. Moms get in free. Visit ferryhawks.com now to lock in your seats. This is the Stone Zone with Roger Stone.
People love him and respect him. Roger Stone.
Now, give him his own. It's the Stone Zone. Here's Roger Stone.
You are now entering the Stone Zone. Well, reporters were moved into the White House press room Monday afternoon after gunfire erupted near the White House perimeter, prompting a fast law enforcement response and temporary security restrictions. Secret Service said the incident occurred near 15th and Independence Avenue, where officers were involved in a shooting with an armed man. According to officials, plainclothes agents were patrolling the outer perimeter identified a suspicious individual who appeared to have a firearm and called for uniformed Secret Service officers for backup. Secret Service Deputy Director Matthew Quinn told reporters the man fled briefly on foot when officers attempted to make contact, then allegedly pulled a firearm and fired towards agents and officers. Law enforcement returned fire, striking the suspect. A firearm was recovered at the scene, and the man was taken to George Washington University Hospital with gunshot wounds. Officials also said a juvenile bystander was believed to have been hit by the suspect's gunfire and was hospitalized with injuries described as non-life-threatening. The Secret Service spokesman, Quinn, noted that the vice president's motorcade had just passed through the area shortly before the shooting. The incident came just before President Donald Trump held a small business event in the White House. Reporters who had staged on the White House North Lawn were moved inside by the Secret Service until later given the all-clear signal. The shooting comes days after the left-wing terrorist attempted to assassinate President Trump and others at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. We're seeing more leftists becoming openly violent in opposition to the president's law and order agenda here. We see it against ICE. We see it against the National Guard. We see it against the administration. We see it against the president himself. The radicalization of the left is out of control and must be considered the biggest existential threat to the republic of anything out there. They have now tried to kill the president 4 times, and I am predicting, sadly, that I suspect that they will try once again. I pray that I'm wrong. Meanwhile, a federal magistrate judge in Washington, D.C. is facing backlash after whining about the jail conditions of Cole Thomas Allen, the 31-year-old Californian, who, by the way, once worked for an intelligence agency contractor. He attempted to assassinate President Trump at the White House Correspondents' Association dinner on April 25th. Allen faces charges including attempted assassination of the president after authorities say he rushed a security checkpoint at the Washington Hilton Hotel armed with a shotgun, handguns, and knives. Prosecutors say he opened fire, wounded a Secret Service agent, and was then subdued. He remains in federal custody. During an emergency hearing, U.S. Magistrate Judge Zia Farvukwa reportedly questioned why Allen had been placed on suicide watch and held in restricted custody during a 24-hour lockup in a padded room with no windows and limited recreation. The judge also raised concerns about Allen's access to his legal team. The reaction from this judge is astonishing. A man accused of targeting the president and endangering others' countless lives is receiving immediate judicial concern over his comfort and rights, while January 6 defendants spent months in harsh pretrial conditions with zero sympathy from D.C. courts or judges. Fox Business host Larry Kudlow, one of the best-dressed men in the country, captured the frustration, asking why anyone would be apologizing to a suspect accused of such a violent attack, not just against an individual, but against the President of the United States. The case has also renewed concerns about the consequences of years of overheated anti-Trump rhetoric from Democrats and their allies and handmaidens in the media. Allen's alleged actions did not emerge in a vacuum. Liberal activists in the justice system are coddling these anti-Trump criminals, while the fake news media provides them with the motive to attack. They work in tandem. This is an organized conspiracy against our nation. Leftists are not our fellow countrymen. Sadly, we have to view them as enemy combatants. Meanwhile, in the District of Columbia, major victory for accountability and truth in law enforcement. Multiple high-ranking D.C. police officers are being fired after an internal probe exposed years of deliberate crime data manipulation under liberal leadership. According to sources, the Metropolitan Police Department has served termination papers to top brass, including figures like 2nd District Commander Tatiana Savoy and Assistant Chief Lachey Marcow. This shakeup follows Republican-led investigations by the House Oversight Committee and the Trump Justice Department, which blew the lid off a systematic scheme to cook the books on crime statistics. Outgoing Chief Pamela Smith and her deputies have created a toxic culture of fear, intimidation, threats, and retaliation. Commanders were pressured to downgrade serious violent crimes, armed robberies, assaults with deadly weapons, burglaries into lesser intermediate categories that didn't show up in the public reports. This made D.C.'s crime numbers appear artificially lower, hiding the true chaos from post-pandemic progressive policies, soft-on-crime DAs, and Democrat governance that left the Capitol reeling. Federal investigators under U.S. Attorney Jeanine Pirro found thousands of misclassified cases, confirming violent crime was far worse than had been advertised. Whistleblowers and district commanders detail how Smith punished accurate reporting and fixated on daily stats to project a false illusion of safety. Classic big government deception to shield failed leftist policies from scrutiny. President Trump's focus on restoring law and order in D.C. exposed this entire fraud. These firings are a long overdue house cleaning. Americans deserve honest statistics, not manipulated numbers that endanger lives and erode trust out of slavish devotion to woke priorities. As people with common sense have warned, when Democrats run cities, they prioritize optics over safety until real accountability arrives. This is a major step towards cleaning up the D.C. swamp and making our nation's capital safe again. 9 months into President Trump's second term, the FBI has sharply ramped up its work on immigration enforcement, reflecting a renewed focus on border security, public safety, and the rule of law. Records show that before Trump returned to office, only 279 FBI personnel were working on immigration-related matters. By September, that number had surged to more than 6,500 agents. Overall, from Inauguration Day to September 7th, more than 9,100 FBI employees had worked on immigration-related assignments, roughly one quarter of the Bureau's 38,000-person workforce. The shift happened quickly. Just 6 days after Donald Trump took office, the number of FBI employees assigned to immigration matters had jumped to 1,390. By early February, it had reached 2,260. This is exactly what voters demanded when they elected President Trump into office, a government finally treating illegal immigration as a national security and crime issue that it has always been. An FBI spokesman said the Bureau constantly realigns resources to ensure the safety of the American people and to defend the homeland and crush violent crime. The FBI is, of course, not alone. Thousands of agents from the DEA, the IRS, and the ATF and other agencies have all been redirected to help with immigration enforcement. After years of lax enforcement, Washington is once again putting American citizens, secure borders, and law and order first. The FBI is not focused on stopping white privilege and hunting down peaceful protesters anymore, or spying on and arresting parents concerned about the curriculum being taught to their children in the public schools. Now they are working to get illegals off the streets and to do the mass deportations we need to protect the demographic integrity of America for generations to come. Well, a new Siena College poll demonstrates that the public realizes that life in the Empire State of New York is becoming unaffordable under one-party Democrat socialist rule.
According to a new survey, 57% of New Yorkers now say that the state's cost of living is heading in the wrong direction.
Only 27% believe it is on the right track.
And this is not just a Republican concern. The concern cuts across party lines, with 59% of Democrats, 79% of Republicans, and 71% of independents
saying that costs are out of control.
Housing is no better. Just 31% of voters say New York is creating enough affordable housing, while 57% say the state is failing. Nearly 70% of Republicans, 2/3 of independents,
and even a plurality of Democrats agree housing costs are just too high.
Crime remains another warning sign.
A majority of voters at 53% say that efforts to reduce crime in the Empire State are moving in the wrong direction.
Despite these failures, Governor Kathy Hochul still leads Republican
Bruce Blakeman 49-33, but that's largely because 64% of voters say they don't know enough about Blakeman to make a judgment. I would point out that an incumbent, in this case Kathy Hochul, at 49 is below 50. That is often a professional's sign of potential weakness. There are also signs of weaknesses for other Democrats. Only 43% say they would vote to re-elect Attorney General Letitia James, while 28% said they would vote to re-elect longtime controller Tom DiNapoli. And Senator Chuck Schumer remains deeply unpopular statewide, with only 33% viewing him favorably and 52% viewing him unfavorably. That means our senior senator is underwater. New Yorkers are fed up with high costs, housing failures, and crime, as well as high taxes. But as seen with New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani, it is the far-left socialists who are tapping into this frustration most effectively, and their policies will actually dramatically worsen all of the problems. Republicans must continue to hang in there because it's likely to get worse in New York State before it gets any better. Meanwhile, FBI Director Kash Patel said he uncovered a secret burn bag room inside the FBI headquarters filled with sensitive documents tied to the Russian-collusion investigation, which I call a hoax. And the room was not even listed on the building map. Appearing on my friend Sean Hannity's podcast, Patel said the room contained more than one burn bag normally used to destroy classified material. But in this case, he said, the documents had not been destroyed. They had been locked away forever in a room that was literally off the map, with no clear access at first. Former FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino previously described finding what he called the mother lode of documents related to Crossfire Hurricane. That's the FBI probe into alleged Trump-Russia collusion. Bongino said the material showed that the investigation was deeply flawed from the beginning and that many people inside the government knew it. The origins of Russiagate's narrative. It was back in July, more than 259 days ago, that the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, released formally classified information showing that Obama-era officials promoted claims about Russian interference in the 2016 election that they knew definitively were false.
The infamously bogus
Steele dossier.
In August, the Justice Department opened a grand jury investigation into those claims.
The Department of Justice has also subpoenaed former FBI Director James Comey over his role in the 2017 Intelligence Community Assessment, as well as issuing a subpoena for former CIA Director John Brennan, one of the ringleaders of the Russian collusion hoax.
This is more evidence of a weaponized bureaucracy operating in the shadows of secret rooms, hidden documents, or discredited code used to target and remove a sitting president.
This is the core of the deep state, and it has existed without accountability for generations. The second Trump administration has done a great job shining light on this conspiracy, but nothing will change unless many of these people are indicted, tried, and convicted for their crimes.
Otherwise, they will just pick up where they left off the next time they serve in the administration for that new course of Washington, D.C.
No, it's not about revenge and retaliation. It's about accountability and justice. I'm Roger Stone, right here in the Stone Zone. I'm going to let you know when we get back.
This is the Stone Zone with Roger Stone.
He likes politics and he's a professional at the highest level. Roger Stone. Where's Roger?
the Stone Zone with Roger Stone.
Roger Stone, who's a one of the smartest political minds. Roger Stone was persecuted. People forget he's actually a brilliant political analyst.
Now, get in the zone. It's the Stone Zone. Here's Roger Stone.
You are now back in the Stone Zone. I'm in Washington, D.C. today, where I rushed to the White House to go once again make the argument against the idea of President Donald Trump making Florida Governor Ron DeSantis Attorney General. I noted once again that DeSantis appointed John Carreal, the chief judge of the Florida State Supreme Court. This was after Carreal announced that he would write in George W. Bush rather than vote for Donald Trump for president. This is yet another example, but the biggest problem I have here is the fact that Ron DeSantis was told by the FBI that they were going to raid Mar-a-Lago, yet he never warned Trump, nor had his lawyers warn Trump's lawyers. Ron DeSantis owes his entire political rise to the 2018 endorsement by Trump that lifted the obscure and little-known congressman who had a terrible suit and a bad haircut and was virtually unknown to the Republican nomination for governor. And then Donald Trump actually had to return to Florida 3 times in the last 2 weeks of 2018 to literally drag Ron DeSantis over the finish. DeSantis went on to win a smashing re-election, but he owes his entire political career and his national prominence to Donald Trump. Yet he challenged Trump in the 2024 primaries, and he made vicious personal attacks on Trump. So I refer once again to the words of Machiavelli. If you take in one who has betrayed you, the only thing you can be certain of is their second attempt to kill you will be more skillful than the first. The other thing the president didn't seem to be aware of the fact is that there's a current scandal in Florida in which Ron and Casey DeSantis actually, with the assistance of the now Attorney General, then their Chief of Staff, James Uthmeyer, actually diverted $10 million from Medicare. That's money that was earmarked for the poor, the handicapped, and the disabled, and they diverted it to their secret dark money political fund. The only reason they weren't prosecuted for this is because they returned the $10 million when they got caught. Now, I ask you, if you rob a bank and you get caught and you return the money, are you still prosecuted for robbing the bank? The answer is, of course, yes. Why Ron and Casey DeSantis and their henchman, James Uthmeyer, were not prosecuted for this diversion of money from Medicare, a federal crime, well, that's because they gave the money back. I'd like to ask the outgoing or former Attorney General Pam Bondi exactly how that worked. It would be an extraordinary error for President Trump to trust Ron DeSantis again. This guy plunged a knife in his back when all he had to do was wait his turn if he wanted to run for president. And then, of course, when Marco Rubio vacated the Senate seat, the governor, DeSantis, could have appointed a caretaker to the seat and run for it himself if he wanted to have a future political career and run for president. But you see, Ron DeSantis doesn't want to work for it. He wants to have it handed to him. I hope the president does not make that mistake. I'm Roger Stone. You're listening to the Stone Zone, and we'll be right back on the other side with the greatest developments here in Washington, D.C. politically. I've been in the bar rooms. I've been in the restaurants. I've been over at the White House. I know what's going on. And I'm going to let you know when we get back.
This is the Stone Zone with Roger Stone.
Roger Stone, who's a one of the smartest political minds. Roger Stone was persecuted. People forget he's actually a brilliant political analyst.
Now, get in the zone. It's the Stone Zone. Here's Roger Stone.
You are now re-entering the Stone Zone. Well, here we go again. We've reported extensively about the fraud in Minnesota, but now a massive Medicaid fraud scandal has been uncovered in Northeast Ohio in the Columbus area, becoming packed with home health care companies billing taxpayers for Medicaid-funded aid services. In Ohio, these are reportedly paid out about $1 billion for those services in 2024 alone. The concern centers on rules that allow family members to be paid as Medicaid-funded caregivers for the elderly or disabled relatives. According to reports, dozens of companies have opened small offices, often with little visible activity, while billing the government for home health services. One building complex reportedly listed 94 separate Medicaid home health companies, allegedly tied to more than $66 million in taxpayer-funded payments. Vice President J.D. Vance responded by calling the allegations shocking and said that the Federal Fraud Task Force will investigate and take immediate action to prosecute fraudsters and stop improper payments where appropriate. Vivek Ramaswamy, the frontrunner, the Republican nominee for governor of Ohio, also vowed a crackdown, saying he will not tolerate Medicaid waste, fraud, and abuse, and promising to return the money to law-abiding Ohioans if he's elected in November. It should come as no surprise that the case is once again centered around Somalis, as Columbus is the state's of Ohio's primary hub for that community. This is what happens when government programs are built on trust, weak oversight, and endless taxpayer dollars. When you import a bunch of third worlders from hostile countries who are alien to civilized norms, immense fraud is what you get. This time, it is time for these Somalis to be deported back to their homeland. They're never going to assimilate. They clearly feel entitled to rip off the rest of us, so I say they must go back. Meanwhile, the Department of Justice is taking Denver to court over a direct assault on the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding Americans. On Tuesday, under the direction of Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche, the Department of Justice filed a federal lawsuit against City and County of Denver and the Denver Police Department, challenging the city's decades-old ban on certain semi-automatic weapons. Federal officials say that Denver has made it a crime to possess, store, sell, or carry firearms the city labels as assault weapons, a term that is a biased political term and not by any means an industry standard. Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche put it plainly that the Constitution is not a suggestion, and the Second Amendment is a fundamental right that cities cannot infringe upon by definition. The Department of Justice argues that Denver's ordinance targets rifles commonly owned by millions of Americans, including AR-15 style firearms, which is among the most popular rifle in the country. The lawsuit argues that Denver's ban violates the constitutional standard recognized in the District of Columbia versus Heller case, where the Supreme Court affirmed that law-abiding citizens have the right to possess firearms in common use for lawful purposes. Denver Mayor Mike Johnston is defending the ban, claiming that it keeps residents safe and reflects the city's values. But the Justice Department says local politicians cannot criminalize constitutional rights simply because they dislike a particular firearm. Assistant Attorney General Harmeet Dillon said that Americans should never face criminal punishment for owning arms possessed by tens of millions of their fellow citizens quite legally. The DOJ is seeking declaratory and injunctive relief to stop Denver from enforcing their illegal and unconstitutional ban. This is yet another great example of how the Trump administration is being proactive in defending the Second Amendment rights of Americans at a time when there are seemingly more alarming and unpredictable threats against us than ever before. It seems that RFK Jr. has once again gone to war with Big Pharma. The Health and Human Services Secretary, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., is taking aim at what many parents and patients have worried about for years, the overprescribing of psychiatric drugs, especially to children. Kennedy announced a new HHS effort focused on psychiatric medications, also known as SSRIs, calling for informed consent, parental autonomy, and a more complete approach to mental health care. Kennedy said the goal is not to tell patients to stop taking medication, but to make sure that their doctors have the information needed to make the right decision. In a new Dear Colleague letter, HHS and agencies, including the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, urge providers to ensure that mental health treatment includes access to evidence-based non-drug options. The department also encouraged careful review of existing prescriptions and, where appropriate, self-deprescribing. The letter makes clear that psychiatric medications can be important for some patients, but it also says medication should not be treated as the only option, nor should it be started, continued, or stopped without careful discussion of risks, benefits, side effects, and alternatives. And withdrawal concerns are also topical. RFK Jr. said the initiative will support safe, evidence-based tapering while clinically inappropriate. The Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration is expected to release a May report on prescribing trends along with guidance for doctors and patients. HHS also plans summer webinars and a July expert panel to help shape formal clinical guidance. The overprescription of some SSRI drugs has resulted in many suicides, particularly around children, and many mass shootings that have been prescribed. Many mass shooters have been prescribed the drugs. RFK Jr. is finally restoring sanity to the prescription of these mind-altering substances. Big Pharma is not in control of our nation's health policy for the first time in generations. Meanwhile, violent crime is spiking all across Europe. New Eurostat data shows a disturbing surge in reported sexual violence against the European Union, causing a third world migrants, with Spain standing out as one of the most alarming cases. According to Spain's La Razón, the country recorded 5,222 rape cases in 2024, compared with just 1,239 back in 2014. This is a 322% increase in rape. That is more than double the already shocking EU average increase of 150% over the same time period. Across the European Union, police registered more than 250,000 sexual violence crimes in 2024. Nearly 100,000 of those were rapes. In Spain, the trend is especially troubling. Penetrative rape cases rose by 143% in just 5 years, from 2,143 in 2019 to 5,206 in 2024. Attempted murders also nearly doubled between 2019 and 2023, rising from 836 to 1,507. Eurostat refuses to identify who is committing these crimes, but other reporting has reported serious concerns about third world migrants being severely overrepresented in Spain's prison population and in these violent crime categories. In 2024, foreign-born offenders reportedly made up just 31% of Spain's prison population, more than double the share of the adult population. The lesson is clear that open border policies carry real consequences, and that European leaders warned that mass migration would make communities less safe. They claimed that diversity was a strength and that multiculturalism would create a better future. This ideology has failed miserably. Now, families across Spain and all of Europe are paying the price for political correctness, weak borders, and elites who refuse to admit reality. We're also getting a much closer look now at the Southern Poverty Law Center, long hailed by the left as a hate watchdog, now stands indicted for funding the white supremacists it claimed to be fighting. The organization's credibility is in tatters. It has long been a long time coming, if you ask me. While the far left outfit raked in hundreds of millions of dollars in mostly small contributions from middle-class donors and poor people, by smearing Christian conservatives, pro-family groups, and patriotic Americans as extremists, court filings reveal that it was far worse than just smears. This was a calculated scam, a campaign to delegitimize Christianity and Americanism while funneling donor cash into radical right activism nationally. Even more damning is how the SPLC, that's the Southern Poverty Law Center, weaponized America's classrooms. In its flagship program called Teaching Tolerance, later rebranded Learning for Justice, they distributed radical curricula to over 400,000 educators, reaching millions of students. Under the banner of anti-bias education, kindergartners were pushed to read books like 10,000 Dresses, encourage them to reject their parents' guidance and embrace gender confusion and reassignment. Meanwhile, older students learned America's founding was irredeemably racist. Western civilization was the root of all evil, and the push for equity meant concepts like merit, borders, and the nuclear family had to be thrown by the wayside. The program's own standards read like a cultural Marxist manifesto. Children must view themselves through identity groups, recognize unequal power relations, and plan collective action for social justice. This wasn't education. It was indoctrination to produce leftist activists hostile to their own American heritage, the true Christian faith, and basic biological truths. I'm sorry, but there are only two genders. The hypocrisy peaks with the Southern Poverty Law Center's embrace of unrepentant weather underground terrorist Bill Ayers. Remember him? In his own magazine, the group hailed the Pentagon bomber as a highly respected multicultural educator, ignoring his bombings and dedication to Robert F. Kennedy Sr.'s assassination. Additionally, the Southern Poverty Law Center's so-called hate map inspired violence, including the Family Research Council shooting. The SPLC's mask is off. It wasn't fighting hate. It was manufacturing it. It was financing it. One indoctrinated child at a time. The Southern Poverty Law Center must be shut down for good, and its leaders and funders must be charged, given a fair trial, and sentenced to prison. In breaking news, the FBI has reportedly launched a criminal investigation into NIH virologist Victor Munster, one of Anthony Fauci's top bat coronavirus researchers at the high-security Rocky Mountain Laboratories in Hamilton, Montana, after he and a colleague were caught smuggling dangerous pathogen samples. The samples that Munster and his colleagues were caught with included monkeypox virus from the Democratic Republic of Congo. According to explosive new report from Paul Thacker, Munster and the NIH lab scientist Claude Yinda were stopped during airport security screening upon their return from Africa earlier this year. Thacker's report comes a day after the White Coast Waste folks, who I've worked very closely with against animal abuse, first posted on X that Munster had been removed from the HHS employee directory and was reportedly suspended. According to the report, authorities discovered a hard-shelled protective case in their luggage containing undeclared human pathogen samples collected from patients. Monkeypox virus is classified by the Department of Health and Human Services as a select agent that poses a severe threat to public safety and requires strict permitting, inactivation, and shipping protocols. Neither scientist has confirmed whether the samples were properly inactivated. HSS has refused all questions over to the FBI, which is now actively investigating. We're unable to comment as this is under investigation, said the HHS spokesperson Andrew Nixon in an email, so we'll refer you to the FBI. Thacker reports that when he contacted the FBI about the investigation into Munster and his NIH researcher, the FBI press office replied by email saying, "We decline to comment." The report also adds that after the COVID virus began infecting Americans, Columbia University virologist Vincent Raccanciello sent Munster an alarming February 2020 email saying that he had heard that the new COVID virus had a furin cleavage site that might have been engineered. That means they doctored it in that lab in Wuhan. If this is true, it's very bad for all virology research, he wrote to Munster. And the fun begins, said Munster. This guy needs to be locked up. Remember, Anthony Fauci lied to Congress when he said under oath that he had not provided taxpayer financing for the weaponization and the development of the Wuhan lab of the COVID-19 vaccination. This guy belongs in jail.
This is the Stone Zone with Roger Stone.
He likes politics and he's a professional at the highest level. Roger Stone. Where's Roger?
This Today's The Stone Zone with Roger Stone.
Roger Stone, who's a one of the smartest political minds. Roger Stone was persecuted. People forget he's actually a brilliant political analyst.
Now, get in the zone. It's The Stone Zone. Here's Roger Stone.
More good news. It is now reported that Mayor Rudy Giuliani, the greatest mayor in New York City history, is no longer on a ventilator, having been hospitalized with pneumonia. He gave us quite a scare, but Rudy Giuliani is a fighter. I had no doubt that he would turn the corner. He is reportedly, actually was in a coma, now slowly recovering. Thank you, Jesus. And also more good news. After months of battling a serious heart condition, I'm thrilled to report that my good friend Jim Hoft of the Gateway Pundit had heart surgery this morning that was a complete success. For the past several years, Jim has effectively suffered from a severe heart issue caused by an infection he contracted while hospitalized during knee surgery nearly 15 years ago. The infection ravaged his heart and even caused him to lose vision in one eye. Despite the pain and the fatigue, Jim rarely spoke about it. He's a humble and honest man and probably one of the greatest friends you could ever have. You see, it was Jim and his brother Joe Hoft at the Gateway Pundit who had the courage throughout my entire ordeal when I was framed in the Russia-collusion hoax to report the truth and to support my efforts to free myself from the deadly snare that was set for me by Robert Mueller and Adam Schiff. Even when Jim wasn't feeling well, he almost said yes to speaking engagements or events because of his deep love for America and for his unwavering determination to fight for this country. As a close personal friend, I can tell you that Jim Hoft and his brother Joe have stood valiantly for the truth when so many others were afraid to publish it. Because of that commitment, he has endured relentless attacks on the Gateway Pundit for the past 6 years, including coordinated lawfare from the left that never seems to end. Yet Jim and his brother Joe have never complained. In fact, Jim's humble nature almost cost him his life this time. He was reluctant to return to the hospital, was struggling with even the simplest daily tasks. It took the encouragement of close friends and loved ones to finally convince him to seek treatment. Doctors determined he needed a valve replacement, a procedure that was anything but routine for Jim. But thanks to the extraordinary skill of his cardiology team and the millions of prayers from Gateway Pundit readers and War Room followers, the surgery was a complete success. We hope Jim's story encourages anyone experiencing symptoms of heart trouble to stop delaying and seek the care they need. Thank you again to everyone who, based on my reports, prayed for Jim and Joe Hoft. Joe had a serious stroke while his brother was actually hospitalized for this surgery, and the entire medical team surrounding the Hofts. Please continue to pray for these two great journalists. In a final item, the White House Correspondents' Dinner shooter and would-be Trump assassination on Tuesday was indicted by a grand jury on 4 counts. Last Monday, Cole Allen, a school teacher from California, was hit with a total of 3 charges: attempting to assassinate the President of the United States, transporting a firearm and ammunition with intent to commit a felony, and discharging a firearm during a crime of violence. U.S. Attorney Jeanine Pirro, who used to be my colleague here, said last week that an additional attempted murder charge would be added after a ballistic test was conducted on the Secret Service agent who was shot. Fox News is reporting that Cole Allen was charged with the same 3 counts as outlined in the criminal complaint, and that a new count of assaulting a federal officer with a deadly weapon was imminent. The indictment was presented to Magistrate Judge Zia Farquhar, who actually apologized to Trump's would-be assassination, Cole Allen, for the treatment he has received in a D.C. jail. Cole Allen, the White House Correspondents' Dinner shooter, who was charged with the attempted assassination of President Trump, was placed on suicide precautions in the D.C. jail. Allen's attorneys argued that placing their clients on suicide precautions is unnecessary and violates his rights. The attorneys whined that Cole Allen is not permitted to make phone calls and has no access to a jail tablet. On Sunday, Cole Allen was taken off of those suicide precautions. This is the problem with America. We care more about the criminals than we do the victims. And a D.C. judge is now whining about the treatment of a man who tried to kill the President of the United States. I'm Roger Stone, right here in the Stone Zone. Until tomorrow, God bless you and Godspeed.
Listen to this podcast now
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Why is the middle class shrinking? Why are people facing an affordability crisis while marginalized individuals called informals grow in numbers? Join me as I travel the world, speaking with people living in invisibility, the leaders working to solve it, and uncovering the hard truths shaping our economy and daily reality.
Download all of Red Apple Media's podcasts right now through your favorite podcast platform.